Thank you so much. And thank you, Helena, for your welcome. And it's fantastic to be here in Sweden, in Stockholm, to talk about technology, but more importantly, the impact that all of you are having with technology in the broader economy and the broader society in Sweden and elsewhere. When you think about the age we live in, and we try to characterize the opportunity, I think it's very clear. Computing is getting embedded in the world, and as computing gets embedded in every place, whether it's in our homes, whether it's in the offices, whether it's in our factories, stadiums, computing is transforming every industry, whether it's oil and gas and retail, agriculture or financial services. And of course, computing is also getting embedded in everything, whether it is cars, which are data centers on wheels, refrigerators, surgical tools, or even coffee machines. That's the opportunity that what we describe as this intelligent cloud and intelligent era is making possible all around us. In fact, one of the things that I've come to realize is it's not just the technology that gets created, but it's really the defining thing in this age is going to be the technology that each of you built. And in particular, what I describe as tech intensity. In a world where every business, in every sector of the economy is going to be a software business, the question really is, how intense is your digital technology? And when we talk about tech intensity, there are two key parts, or three key parts to that. One is, are you able to adopt the latest and greatest technology so that you're not recreating the wheel? Because it's very important for you to get the best bootstrap to create your technology. That means you want access to world-class technology. And then you want to build your own digital capability, your own digital IP on top of this world-class technology, right? So that's sort of the second part. And then, of course, trust is paramount. Trust that people like us who are in the tech industry and platform creators have to first guarantee. But trust is much broader than that. In a world where every financial institution, every retail company, every automotive company, every healthcare company is a tech company, guess what? Every one of the ecosystems they build also will need to have trust. So that's really how we think about tech intensity. And that's what is driving Microsoft. Microsoft's mission is to empower every person and every organization on the planet to achieve more in this tech-intense world. When we got started in our journey in 1975, when Paul and Bill started Microsoft, the original product they created was the basic interpreter for the Altair. A lot has changed since 1975. But what has not changed is that vision of building these platforms and tools so that others can build platforms and tools of their own. We build technology so that others can build more technology. In fact, I also sort of describe our mission as it's not about making any one of our partners dependent on us. In fact, our entire mission is to help that retail customer, that healthcare customer, the automotive customer, to be more independent using our technology in building their own digital capability. That is the entirety of our mission. And so to do that, we are building out that core platform capabilities, starting with the infrastructure around compute at the bottom, business process layer with Dynamics 365 and Power Platform, as well as Microsoft 365 for communication and collaboration, right? That's really the bootstrap that we want to provide so that you can build your own business, your own digital ecosystem, your own digital platform. That's in the entirety of what we are all up to. So what I thought I'll do is just unpack this by layer. So I'll start at the very bottom, which is the compute layer or Microsoft Azure. Now, the fascinating thing about Azure is We're building it out like a world's computer, which has 54 regions worldwide. We have compliance with 90+ standards all around the world. I mean, if you think about it, when you try to operate across the world, across regulated industries with legitimate data sovereignty needs, we are trying to bring down the barriers for any one of you who's building out your own digital ecosystem to be able to access the world's economy and customers and consumers using these new rails of digital compute. Now, we've also got the most open approach to this. For example, Linux and Windows is first class. .NET and Java is first class. Every layer, whether it's in the database layer or in the runtime layer or in the infrastructure layer, we have sort of made sure that we build to accommodate for what is a real heterogeneous world. And one of the things that I'm really excited about today is that announcement around the data centers in Sweden. So we're really opening up 2 new data centers in Sweden and creating a new region for Azure in Sweden, which is obviously very exciting. But the most exciting thing to me is the sustainability aspects of it. We are going to be 100% renewable energy on this data center region, but also zero waste operations. So really setting the standard for what it means to build a next-generation data center architecture starting right here in Sweden, and it's going to really propagate throughout our data center footprint. And we're very, very excited to, in fact, collaborate with Vattenfall on making sure that we build one of the most leading data centers right here in this region to really foster the innovation coming out of this region. So exciting news for us. Now, yeah. You know, one of the things for me around the cloud has always been to think about distributed computing, not just as something that happens in the cloud, but as something that spreads across the cloud to the edge. We've always conceived of Azure as being that distributed computing fabric where we have Azure and all of those regions, including the region in Sweden, but as well as extending to the edge with Azure Stack, Azure Databox Edge, to Azure IoT. Even HoloLens is a quintessential Azure Edge device or Azure Connect. But the most interesting thing is what we've recently done with Azure Sphere, right, which is 9 billion microcontrollers are shipped every year. And now you have the ability to take any one of those microcontroller units and make it an Azure compute node in terms of Azure Sphere. So that's really the architecture, the idea of being able to build your applications and rely on the consistency, whether it's identity, management, security, or application infrastructure across the cloud and the edge is one of the true hybrid capabilities that differentiates what we're doing so that you can build your own IP and rely on it. Now, one of the things that we're also doing on top of this is building out a complete tool chain. Because we are obsessed, is the right word, or about excellence around productivity, around development. Because to us, in fact, the very origin of our company was as a tools company. So as you can imagine, we think very deeply about developer productivity as a core priority. GitHub acts as that really starting point for any developer. Now there are 35+ million developers, open source developers who start. Their home is GitHub. That's where they collaborate. That's where their source code is. That's where they do continuous integration. In fact, your IP gets created around the GitHub workflows. So we care deeply about making sure GitHub, as well as Visual Studio and Visual Studio Code, which is the #1 and #2 tools. There was a recent survey done where the 2 code editors and the IDEs were Visual Studio Code and Visual Studio itself. So therefore, the combination of GitHub and Visual Studio creates that productivity gain for any one of your developers, and we think a lot about it. And then especially coupled with Azure, DevOps, the ability to continuously integrate and continuously deploy your IP to all of that Azure infrastructure or any other cloud. In fact, one of the things I should mention is when we think about GitHub or our tooling, we're trying to be language agnostic. We're also trying to be cloud agnostic. So in other words, we assume you're going to use multiple clouds. We assume you're going to write in multiple languages, use multiple frameworks. But we want you to have the most productive experience doing so. So that's really the goal we have with both GitHub and Visual Studio as well as Azure DevOps. The one thing I wanted to mention is this new tool that we put in called Azure Play Fab. It came out of our Xbox world. Interestingly enough, if you're a game developer, you know this very well, that your real work starts the day after you've launched your game. And you want to operate the game as an economy itself with the best analytics. So this notion of DevOps to deploy or continuously integrate and continuously deploy is one aspect. The other aspect is to continuously monitor, get analytics from your application, and then operate. And that's something that we describe as live ops, which PlayFab incorporates. So this combination of GitHub, Visual Studio, Azure DevOps, and Azure PlayFab, we think is going to be the most foundational pieces for building your own IP. Now, of course, it's not just the tools. You need a very robust data layer. We are making significant investments in building out that robust data layer for all of your transactional needs. We realize that the variety, the volume, the velocity of data, whether it's relational data or non-relational data, graph databases, document databases, especially with something like Cosmos DB, we have a leading multi-region, multi-model database. And so we are very, very thrilled to sort of have all of this infrastructure available for you to build your applications. And not just on the transactional side, but even on the analytics side. The pipeline from Azure Data Factory to Data Explorer to Databricks to Power BI visualizations, and then the ability to be able to have the data lake and the AI capabilities. So that entire workflow is, again, something that we have put a lot of effort to make sure that you get the best bootstrap on the data side. Now, if you have infrastructure, you have tools, you have data, the quintessential characteristic of any application being built in 2019 or beyond will be AI. And that's where we are investing to democratize AI, because the AI for us is not about some capability we have. We have been doing research in fundamental breakthroughs in AI since the very beginning of Microsoft. In fact, it was when we started in 1995 is when we started Microsoft Research. And in the last 3-4 years, the breakthroughs we have in terms of achieving these human parity milestones, whether it's in object recognition or speech recognition or machine reading and comprehension. In fact, just this year around conversational Q&A have been amazing. It's great to see the breakthroughs both because of compute power, availability of data, as well as algorithmic breakthroughs. But to us, celebrating these as just research milestones is just not as interesting as it is to sort of translate this into a set of infrastructure, right? The best FPGA or for inference, best GPU capability, all of the infrastructure that you need, the best frameworks for you to be able to, Azure ML and the tooling around it. In fact, we now have a special branch of DevOps for machine learning ops, because one of the most important things we need to do around AI is to make the engineering around AI robust enough, like we have for rest of our code and data. So how do we do that for all of what we do with AI? So that's the investment we are making, and it's great to see, in fact, lots of different customers. In fact, I was pleased to see us making progress right here in Sweden. One of the use cases of some of the AI capabilities was Spotify. Spotify has a very cool new podcast tool that they have called Soundtrap, and what it does is allows anybody to build, do their own podcast. And they're using our speech recognition, in fact, specifically speech to text capability. But the most interesting feature they added was for anyone to modify their podcast, all they needed to do is to go in and edit the transcript, and it'll automatically edit the podcast. So think about how you could use AI to improve the overall productivity. And in fact, they're also taking this particular tool chain and integrating it with Microsoft 365 so that they can reach the education market, right? So students can use OneNote and Soundtrap to be able to do their podcasts. In fact, even doing fantastic integration around the identity side so that people can collaborate across the school system. So very cool to see some of the innovation from Spotify. We also have an example here of Antisemex, which is really all around pest control. And for them, they needed to build essentially an IoT plus AI system. They have over 100,000 IoT devices out there in the field all over Europe. They needed to be able to get the real-time data back and to be able to not only use it for monitoring, but to be able to then reason over that data and create the machine learning that allows them to continuously improve the efficacy of what their entire business is. So it's great to see, again, another example of that real-time feedback loop between the cloud and the edge, data and AI in the real world. So that's a bit of what's happening in the bottommost layer of infrastructure all the way to AI. I want to sort of move to the next layer, which is all around business process. To us, in fact, one of the most exciting things that's happening is how the need for applications is expanding. Right? If you think about what is happening is everything that can be digitized is being digitized. That means you have more workflow. Now, the question really is, how can the total enterprise come together? It's not about creating every new application as a new silo, but the ability to take your customer operations, your employee operations, your core operations, all and bring the data across all of this together. In fact, one of the ways I describe an AI-first company is a company that doesn't just optimize the data and the AI output of one system, but it's able to take data from one system and, in fact, optimize the outcome of another system. That's really the digital feedback loop that every enterprise and every ecosystem is trying to achieve. And the business process layer that we're building out for that is Dynamics and Dynamics 365 and Power Platform. And it's really exciting to see. This is an area that I worked on for many years past, and finally we have cracked that hard computer science problem of how do you allow for the continuous customization of business processes while at the same time ensuring the agility and the upgradability, because you really do not want to create new silos. So it's a modern, modular system that is extensible. And that's what we have built in this business process layer, and that's going to be critical across every business. Now, a couple of good examples. In fact, H&M has been using Dynamics to drive their new brands, to really have the agility around both some of the new brands that they have, as well as the first-line work. In fact, I think Arti was here just before me, talking a lot about what they're doing across AI and business process and across their supply chain, as well as their frontline work. They also, for example, built this beautiful AI mirror in their flagship store in New York. So a lot of end-to-end innovation that is happening, that H&M is driving on top of this, platform capability. Now, one of the other aspects of business process that I'm very excited about is the coming together of what is today analog and physical and digital with mixed reality. It's pretty interesting to me. When we first introduced HoloLens, we had not realized that HoloLens was going to be a real breakthrough in commercial applications. In particular, it was going to transform how people think about architecture and construction, industrial design, how people think about remote assistance, remote surgery, how people think about training. These were all of the use cases that have been absolutely transformative. And in fact, we now have built HoloLens 2 to take all that feedback with twice the field of view, much more comfort, but lots of new applications. In fact, Dynamics 365 ships with out-of-the-box applications for training, remote assistance, layout, and it's exciting to see all this come together to truly transform the landscape of business process with mixed reality. So to give you a flavor for what's happening with HoloLens, I just wanted to roll the video. It's fantastic to see how HoloLens, is really changing all of these application categories that we've always had, but have never really been able to bridge that last gap between what is virtual and what is really physical and real. And the ability to use this new medium is fantastic. In fact, one of the case studies I sort of learned coming in was the reconstruction of an entire city. Kirunastad, which is a city, I guess, which is the northernmost city in Sweden with 18,000 residents, needs to move. And it is great to see how the city planners are using HoloLens as a way to really design the move, but are able to, in fact, really get a much better sense of all of the data they already have about their topography, and to be able to visualize it and do the precision planning. That's the type of business process implementation that we imagine happening between a lot of the workflow applications as well as the visualization capabilities of HoloLens. And so that's a little bit on the business process layer. I want to sort of talk about Microsoft 365 as that next logical thing that we are building around users and their productivity and communication needs. We have a long heritage here. Obviously, we've built Windows and Office, but we have done a fundamental shift where instead of starting from just the device, we think about putting the user at the center and then designing around the user their relationships with other users and people inside the organization and outside the organization, their schedules, their work artifacts, their projects, and really thinking about these connected experiences that span devices. And in fact, even the user interface that spans senses. You may want to start on one device with speech. You may move to another device and do keyboard and mouse and ink. The ability for you to be able to transcend any given device and have that true multi-device, multi-sense experience is what we're really trying to build with Microsoft 365. Now, we have, in fact, multiple customers who are using Microsoft 365 locally. We have a municipality that's chosen to use Microsoft 365 primarily for its ability to collaborate in the cloud, but also security, which is huge. One of the biggest challenges is how do you ensure cybersecurity is paramount for anyone moving to the cloud. And so, in fact, if anything, it is a much more secure environment. And when cyber attacks are not just about the big companies, it's about sort of the small business attacks. If you look at the precision with which the attack vectors are being targeted today, it is really the medium-sized businesses, public sector institutions that get most impacted. And the move to the cloud and some of the tooling and some of the services of Microsoft 365 really help in that, ensuring cybersecurity. Also, Sandvik is using, and in fact, one of the products that we are very excited about is Teams. What Teams brings together is 4 capabilities. It brings together core messaging, meetings, collaboration, as well as business workflow, and has been transformative. In fact, one of the things that up to now, we have always seen a lot of what is considered our applications being used by knowledge workers. But Teams is being deployed to transform the workflow habits of first-line workers. So this is people who are a retail specialist at the front line, somebody who's on the shop floor or the factory floor. These are the folks who are using Teams and coordinating the workflow with the knowledge workers. And Sandvik is a great example of that, where they're able to use Teams across the enterprise to drive their productivity needs. So that's a real whirlwind tour of what's happening across the infrastructure layer, business process layer, as well as the core collaboration and communication layers, and how partners and customers are already innovating on top of it. But it would be, I would be remiss not to talk about trust. Because ultimately, it is going to be so important for us not to just build technology, but to really ensure that there is real trust in the technology that all of us build. That means when it comes to privacy, obviously there is regulation like GDPR we need to be compliant with. But more importantly, we have to build systems which deal with personal data and privacy as a human right. And that means it's an architectural design point. So that means everything that we do, but everything that we enable you to build, if you're building a banking application, a retail application, or a healthcare application, we need to ensure that that application is not only going to be GDPR compliant, but will also ensure that you will have the capability to continuously treat personal data as a human right. Second is, of course, cybersecurity. And I already talked about it in the context of Microsoft 365. But one of the biggest things that we are investing in is the operational security posture that we then translate into capabilities such as security across Microsoft 365, whether it's Windows Defender or Office 365, Advanced Threat Protection, any of those capabilities. But the most important thing is, how do we use that operational security posture to help protect the most vulnerable of populations, that is small businesses, public sector institutions, consumers. And so therefore, we're not only working on our own, but we're also collaborating broadly across the industry to ensure that there is cybersecurity. In fact, we've even called for what we describe as the Digital Geneva Convention, because it's so important that we have global norms around how we come together to protect these populations that are most vulnerable. And of course, AI ethics is at the forefront. There's a lot of talk about AI innovation, AI breakthroughs. But the question is not just what we can do with computers, but what should we do with computers? And that's, I think, the question of our times. But it starts, though, with us as creators of AI having a set of design principles. You can even call them ethical principles, but I even think about these as engineering practices that ground ethical principles so that we can build the AI world that we all want to live in. Take, for example, any language model that you incorporate in your application. How do we ensure that the language models that you put into your applications don't have some of the biases that are there in our society? That means we need to have software engineering tools that can take out those word embeddings and de-bias those models. So that's the type of investment. That's the type of push we as a tech community collectively will need to have to set the standards. It's not just about building AI, but to ensure that the AI we build has that grounding in the ethics and principles that we all want in the systems that we build. I want to close, though, by talking about, I think, what drives us at Microsoft, but quite frankly, all of us who are using technology to have impact in the world. Because ultimately, the communities we operate in, the communities we live in, are being shaped by technology. And that's what gives us the energy, the motivation to do our very best work. And when you think about that, one of the things that I always look at is saying, okay, how is our participation, our partnerships with all of you in every community, in this case in Sweden, changing the productivity of Swedish small businesses? How is it helping public sector institutions in Sweden get more efficient? How is it helping large multinationals out of Sweden get globally more competitive? That's really what it's all about. But we also think about educational outcomes and health outcomes. And when you think about health, any GDP anywhere in the world is driven by their ability to make health more affordable and better in terms of outcomes for people. And I was sort of really thrilled to see a startup here called Koala Life build out this new monitoring system for cardiac care patients. If you think about cardiac care, that's one of the big drivers of cost in the healthcare systems all around the world, in Europe and in Sweden. In fact, in Sweden, there's 1.5 million patients who have cardiac issues. And so the ability to change that frontier, the curve of how you monitor and ensure that the right type of care is being provided. This is one startup out of Sweden who is able to make such a difference because of that malleable quality of software. That's the impact, that's the opportunity that all of us have in this next wave of digitization. And it's really exciting to see. So I just wanted to be able to share that last story with you, because to us, it all comes down to our mission of empowering everyone in Sweden to be able to have that tech intensity to not only reshape the community here, but also the world. Thank you all so very, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
How do we feed the world without wrecking the planet?
I need to make it possible because it's so important.
The first time I actually could read that book, I was proud of myself.
You can look at the world and see the problems, or you can see opportunity.
Innovation is a journey. And every step we take together.
Using AI, we can reduce waste and produce more food.
What we do is about more than technology.
When it's reading, I see spaces between the words.
It's about the people who use it.
No matter how your body is, everyone can play.
It's about the world we share and the future we build.
With AI, we are able to reproduce historical places, so you can experience history.
It's a big responsibility, but it's an even bigger opportunity. That is why we empower every person and organization to achieve more.
These are real solutions. We're solving problems we didn't even know we had.
Because when we empower each of us, we empower all of us.